All right, everybody. So thank you so much for coming. This is our first speaker event of the semester slash year. We are being talked to by the lovely Allissoon Lockhart, who is a producer at Studio Meala, a supervisor at Netflix, and also made her own show, or is making her own show, which is amazing and awesome. I don't know how you do all those things at once, but it is super awesome. So she has a little presentation she's going to give us, just some background about herself, about her show, and about pitching shows. So, Allissoon, I leave the rest to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to everyone, Haley, Claudia, and Maggie for getting in touch with me. And especially to you guys at the University, it's fun to say, University of Central Florida. It's fun to say to me because where I went to school, it was Southern. So it was always like the University of Southern California. So Central is like a fun new vocabulary word for me. But yeah, just as Haley said, I'm really excited to get to talk to you guys about myself, Battle of the Bands. If you know about it, if you don't, we can go into that. And then really, mainly, which is what I titled this presentation, is, making a cartoon, but specifically kind of the like pre-production end. We're not really going to go into like how to make animation because y'all are doing that 24/7 at school, but really, how to take idea in brain and, hopefully get the meeting in front of people to talk about it. So we'll just kind of like dive right in. Oh, will it not skip for me? There we go. All right. Did it move on the thing? Okay,
yeah, I did. You're good.
Right. Awesome. Who the heck am I? So, as Haley introduced, I am Allissoon Lockhart. I'm a creator and showrunner. I'm a producer, and I've been working in film and animation for about 8+ years. That's kind of about the time that I've actually been in Los Angeles too. So, kind of works out. Second I got here, I kind of just started working. So, what some things that I've worked on, I tried to put them in chronological order, but I did start off in live action. So when I was, little, I'm sure all of you kind of had the same view of movies in general, where it was like, movies are so cool. I want to work on a movie. Like movie sets seem so hustle and bustle. And I will always be thankful and flabbergasted that my first job out here in Los Angeles was Interstellar. I got to be on the movie for about 3 weeks or a month, just for filming. They were doing some of their like NASA shots. I have not seen this movie since it came out, but space, right? So like they made a hotel downtown into NASA headquarters. It was very crazy. But eventually, from working on that set, being at school, I got really involved in stop motion because a lot of the people, who work in art departments for live action film, find that crossover into stop motion. Because that's like, stop motion is the combination of like animation and being on a set. So I got to do time at Shadow Machine on Hell and Back, and eventually some time at Stupid Buddies, and they make Robot Chicken. They're famous for it. But I've done some time on Robot Chicken, but also a show that went to a network that I've never heard of ever in my entire life, which is Crackle. I think it's Sony's streaming network. But so Super Mansion was really fun. I've worked on daytime and late night shows such as Conan and Home and Family being the daytime one. And I did a little bit of time kind of at the end of my live action career on a close to home documentary for me as a USC Trojan. I got to work on a documentary called Women of Troy, which is about basketball players. I did music for the Croods, and we'll go into my musical background in a bit here, but really 2D, as I'm sure a lot of you here, loving 2D and 3D animation. I really fell in love with it. I did a really good tenure at Bento Box, which was so fun. I worked in both seasons of Central Park, which is on Apple, and of course Bob's Burgers is their big show. I've been at Crunchyroll for a little bit of time on some original projects, but currently I'm at Netflix. We just wrapped a show called Inside Job. It's kind of fun that I actually get to plug it though too, because it's coming out this month in Spooky Month. If you like Gravity Falls, the showrunner Shion Takeuchi is a writer of Gravity Falls. This is her show, so female created, female showrun. Alex Hirsch of Gravity Falls is an executive producer on it. It's an adult 2D adult animated show coming out on Netflix. Really funny. If you like Gravity Falls, you will like the turns and fun that this show has. What I'm currently working on, which is also way too many things. It is my bread and butter is I'm the creator and showrunner of Battle of the Bands, which we'll go into. I also am creating and pitching 2 other projects with some other creators because I have a lot of fun being collaborative and not just, doing things by myself. As Haley wonderfully mentioned, which thank you, I am a supervisor at Netflix now. And my main thing too, though, is I am a producer at Studio Meala. They're a 2D animation studio. They work with I'm sure, a lot of the storyboard artists and animators that you follow on Twitter. They just recently did the animated episode for Pen 15. So that was really cool. It's out on Hulu, but I'm in charge of their music videos and their short form content. So trailers, video game trailers, animation shorts, stuff like that. And then as a freelance producer, I take in pitches sometimes. So currently as much as I'm taking Battle of the Bands out, I want new shows, period, not just mine. It's like, I want new IP out in the world. So I'm a producer on Janie Lee's 2 projects. She's famous for the Camp Counselor Jason comics, if you've ever seen them on Instagram or Twitter. So I'm working on 2 of her shows. And Jonty Peking and Paul Nafsi have a new show coming out that I'm helping them out with. And Jonty is Mr. Weebles, as known on the internet. He's from the classic Newground YouTube era. You might know him for the Badger, Badger, Badger Mushroom song or the Narwhal song. He is the funniest dude I have ever met in my entire life. He streams on Twitch all the time, but so I'm working on too many things. Is basically the end of that story. So how did this madness all start for me? I'm from Seattle, Washington. So as I mentioned, I'm not from Los Angeles, I'm from Seattle, and I grew up wanting to do music. I wanted to be a film session musician. So I wanted to play instruments and be in the orchestras that got to play like Back to the Future songs or Pirates of the Caribbean, Lord of the Rings. I loved those big movies with the big scores. And I've been playing saxophone because I'm a band kid. If you just want to know that right now, I'm a band kid. So I played saxophone for like 17 going on years. Fun fact, if you play saxophone, usually you also play flute and clarinet because they have very similar fingerings. So as a woodwind player, I play both of those. I wanted to learn French horn, so I picked up that one year in high school, and I learned bassoon. So I really wanted to do music. That's what I wanted to go to college for. I was like, cool, nothing can stop me. Didn't really work out. So my ending year of high school, auditions were coming up, and life happened. And then I was like, oh my gosh, what is my backup? Because getting in is so hard. There's only so many spots at orchestras. I wanted to go to film school, which of course my parents the entire time were like, you want to do music, which is kind of hard to do, and you also want to try and get into film school. I'm sure they were sweating at the kitchen table every night. So I picked the schools that I wanted to apply to, as I'm sure you guys all did, either a little bit ago or recently. And I didn't get into any of the schools that I applied to. I got into one on the last round, which was my hometown school, the University of Washington. Beautiful, lovely school. Go Huskies. I didn't really want to go there. They didn't do film. That's not usually what people go to the University of Washington for. So I was like, how am I going to, do the art, animation, music stuff that I really wanted to do there? And I don't know who did this to this day, but somebody at USC, which is where I ended up going, sent in an appeal on my behalf. I do not know who that person is. And I got into the game design program, which at USC is a part of the cinematic arts school. So me being a huge gamer, I have an older brother of 4 years. We're a Nintendo household, and then we found PlayStation, but it was definitely like Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube was like the bread and butter of our household. So I was like, oh my gosh, I get to hang out with the cool film students, but I get to be the video game nerd. This is great. So moved to Los Angeles. My major was in game design, and I minored in game animation and Japanese language. So then this third bullet point here to kind of transition to what I really want to talk about is how I found animation, because the thing that I really liked about game design was cutscenes. The games that I loved growing up and even got to play in, like when I was at school, like college level, like I wanted to play those JRPGs. I wanted to play those really, really story intensive games. And I loved the voice acting and the writing and the cutscenes that went into that kind of stuff. They tried to get me to code 4 years of USC. They were like, you should learn C+ or JavaScript or something. I'm like, No. So I would try and sneak my way over to the animation school and their classes as much as possible. So the golden word of this presentation, you're going to hear me say it 1.5 million times, is network. So just by talking to people, by engaging with people and being like, hey, I still love game design. Like I'm helping make games in my classes, like I'm sure you guys are all doing with your theses or projects or whatever have you. I was just like, how can I learn more about this other thing? So I did get to take a lot of animation classes and resources from great faculty. And that only comes from, speaking up about it. I'm gonna take a sip of water here. I'm going a mile a minute. Woo, all right. So I was trying to think up when I was making this presentation, I was like, what is my best college advice? And it kind of goes along with what I had just said is, what's my best college advice? Go into college, continue in college, like whatever year you guys are, and allow your interests to change. Because I always say this jokingly, but like if you aren't trying to change your major at least once in college, really look at what your interests are. You're going there to, be open to new things, and especially in animation and game design, right? There are so many job positions and titles that you might not even know about. There are so many fun things that make a show possible, from, writing to delivering it to the network, that aren't just storyboard artist or animator, which are, like the really big, popular, fun terms, but, you never, get to know if you like it until like there's sound mixing for animation in games. There's, environment artists, there's riggers, there's lighters. If you watch the credits of especially those big feature films, I know TV shows, they go really, really fast, but like, if you stop and pause those credits, there are so many other job titles that sometimes the class and the schools that you're in don't necessarily like pinpoint on. So, and I always have to say this, college isn't the only route. I know you guys all know that, but I went to college. You guys are clearly in college. But it isn't the only route. So there is something that interests you that you don't get lecture time or, panel time to get somebody to talk to you about it. YouTube, people on Twitter, learn about what really interests you. And if college is the route, please know the people you meet are way more important than the paper you're going to get at the end of graduation. Paper's awesome, and you can put it on your resume and whatnot, but the people you meet are really going to help you in the long run. Networking, once again, is the golden word. So after college for me, right? So I graduated, hooray, love it. And I always want to say this to young people, because it happens throughout the whole industry, whether you've worked on 10 productions or you're coming out of college. It is sometimes really hard to get a job. As much as we all, go to film school, like animation specific, or, you get an internship, what have you, it still takes a long time. And it is very, I don't know if the word is okay or normal, whatever one you want to choose. It is so normal to, take care of yourself and your family and stuff, and work retail, be a bartender, be a barista. I worked retail out of college, and I had worked on Interstellar. Like it is hard sometimes to get a job, and it is totally okay to, and it's hard though. It's totally okay, but it's hard. It's hard to do a long shift at something that, you don't want to do. You want to be doing animation, and you got to go home and spruce up the portfolio. You got to send out, I remember sending out millions of resumes at like 8 p.m. And then I'd be like, cool, have to go to bed because I got to wake up tomorrow. It's hard, but it does get easier. But like some of us, won't have the picture perfect, I went to college and got the Pixar internship, and now I'm a storyboard artist for the next 50 years. That happens for some people, but it's totally okay if it doesn't, because it's going to happen when it's meant to happen. That's just how I take it. So after college, I worked retail for a little bit, and then eventually I hooked up with my stop motion people again, because I kept bugging the crap out of them. I was like, you need someone to paint things, you need somebody to clean up paintbrushes, anything. And I got to go back to Stupid Buddies and work on another season of Super Mansion. This photo actually down there is the wrap of season 3. And all of those pieces of really vibrant colored pieces of paper are all storyboard panels, because as I mentioned earlier, stop motion is very live action centric, where, like there's sets set up on stages, people light them, and then they have the cameras to shoot everything while the animators move stuff around. So they need to know what shot is on what set, you know, like where is Billy always going to set 3? Cool, he needs these puppets. So all those story panels get put up on a really big board. So I have touched all of those pieces of paper. And at the wrap party, seeing that, I was like, oh no, I hate this. So many staples, so many staples. So while I was working though in production and getting my feet wet, I always knew I wanted to be creative, right? That I wanted to create my own thing. And I'm sure you guys are all the same way. You've had like a character or, you know, an OC or an idea or something that's just really like an aesthetic has always felt really cool to you or something like that. So I was that kind of person too. So I made my first pitch, which totally got put on the shelf, as some projects do, but it was fun. You know, I was working on it. I had a few friends kind of batted around with me, you know, college level kind of project. And because I had worked at Shadow Machine, and they knew that, you know, like, oh, Allissoon, like she, you know, she has a little idea that she's working on. Can she do a practice pitch? Can she do a pitch? And they were really, really nice, and they let me do that. So I got to pitch a dumb cartoon, like I said, that got put on the shelf. But the clicking moment for me, and there's, you know, there will be multiple clicking moments in your career, was when I went into that room and I got to pitch to one of the execs at Shadow Machine. I didn't feel nervous. I was like stoked. And that was like a clicking moment for me of like, oh, pitching and kind of like having that, like, let me tell you a creative idea, but then also, you know, kind of like businessly respond to it was like engaging to me. So I was like, it's not going to be with this, but what is the next path? And that, of course, will lead me to where we're going in this presentation. But I do want to mention the other part of my college / outside of college that's really important to me and Battle of the Bands, and that's music. So I am clearly a very, very musically oriented person. As I mentioned, I'm a band geek. Get ready. So I loved film scores, you know, I loved movie soundtracks. I loved video game soundtracks. I think I've seen the Zelda concert live like multiple times, like love it to death. But I grew up in the era boy bands were like just starting and were really, really popular. So we had NSYNC and Backstreet Boys Fever. I was Team Backstreet Boys. I don't think you needed to pick a side, but I very clearly did. I still love NSYNC. And I also was growing up at the prime demographic when emo and pop punk was like hitting its like first big stride. And if you could see my arm right now, I have My Chem tattoos up the wazoo. So I love My Chemical Romance. That was my favorite thing. And when I really find, you know, not to make this whole, because I could talk to you guys like for like 10 hours about My Chemical Romance, but the thing I really wanted to mention that I think is really important with music is, you know, some albums your dad shows you, your mom or a parental guardian. Sometimes your friends will introduce you to something, and it's really special and important because you remember the people who like, oh, she sent me this song, or oh, they gave me this album. I think as much as that is wonderful, something that also is really important is the first thing that you find on your own. Nobody showed it to you, wasn't an older brother, wasn't an older sister. You found it on the internet or you found it somewhere else. For me, that was 3 Cheers for the Sweet Revenge. I remember being in the Seattle Public Library and seeing that, you know, like, because it's a drawing, an illustration, right, up on the shelf. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? I need this. Thank goodness my mom is not like the most conservative person on the planet, but she let us listen to whatever we wanted or play video games, whatever we wanted. But she definitely like didn't like this album cover because she was like, there's blood all over the people's faces. Like, we can't listen to this. But like, thankfully she let me take it home. And it was just so magical being like, wow, I get to be the friend that gets to show people this. And that really made me fall in love with the band. The other funny like pillar of my musical journey is my parents didn't really show me classic rock. And clearly I look just straight from the Zoom call like somebody who screams hair metal, and I love that, and it's a choice. But the funny thing to me was they didn't show me any. My dad wasn't like telling me about, you know, AC/DC or anything like that. I would babysit the kid next door to me. And the dad had one of those classic like 90s CD racks where it would spin. It was very fancy, like so many CDs. So I would steal CDs from him. So I'd go home and I'd have like the Metallica Black Album. I'd have like Appetite for Destruction, like Bon Jovi CDs and AC/DC, right? Def Leppard, Hysteria, all of this stuff. So I'd be mentioning things to my parents, and my mom and dad would be like, why do you know about that? Or like we'd be in Target and I'd see a Rolling Stones shirt. I'd be like, oh, this is so cool. I love the Stones. And my mom would be like, no, do you? Like what? Like what is going on here? So I kind of like oddly found classic rock myself, and at a very impressionable age, which clearly shaped everything else about me. And AC/DC was actually my first concert in middle school, and I was the youngest person there by far. So what that really leads me to is those are my musical interests, but clearly heavy metal is really rad. So when I graduated college, I fell head over heels in love with heavy metal. And this is, going into Battle of the Bands here. Like it was the first community that I really had felt. And like I'm the girl who played saxophone for 17 years. So when I found heavy metal, I was like, oh my gosh. Like I started learning the drums. I now drum in 2 different bands. Like I love power metal, which is, more of the sing-songy vocally metal instead of kind of like the guttural, like, like Meshuggah metal, which I love. I love all kinds of metals on certain occasions, but like you turn on a power metal like Striker or Dragon Force or like that kind of like symphonic metal, I'm good to go forever. And I started meeting bands. I would go out to shows like 2 to 3 times a week. Like this was the thing that, my entertainment money was going to. I eventually was a tour manager, and I'd go out with bands, and I knew so many people in that scene that, when I came to the, like, do I want to make another cartoon show? What do I want to make it about? Oh, I know exactly what I want to make it about. And that's what led to Battle of the Bands. So now I'm going to tell you kind of like the history of my show. And it really kind of came from that. When I put that cartoon show, the older one with the dude with the cape on the shelf, I kind of got a little self-conscious because I wanted to be creative. I knew I had other ideas, but I was really self-conscious and like, oh, I don't want to just jump to another thing because everybody's going to think I'm forcing myself to be creative, or like I'm desperately trying to find a new thing to like latch onto. And I got really self-conscious. And then I realized creativity happens when it does. Like I don't need to, put myself in a box. And I think the thing that I really wanted to change from my first little idea that I had been working off of was I want to talk about something that I know a lot about, that I feel really like, educated in, obviously can learn more, but I wanted to do something that really excited me. And I felt like I could sit down with somebody and just talk to them for hours. And clearly that was heavy metal. So that's where it came from for Battle of the Bands. I waited, God, like a month, and then this like rush of like, I love fantasy because of all the video game stuff. Like I love JRPGs, I loved Pokemon, I loved Avatar: The Last Airbender, I loved all that fantasy anime stuff. But then over here, I was like, I'm going to heavy metal shows like 2 to 3 times a week. How do we cross these? And that was, once again, as I mentioned, these clicking moments. That was another clicking moment for me. So Battle of the Bands. Battle of the Bands isn't just a show about battling. Are there bands? Yeah. Do they battle? Of course. Do bands have elemental powers that turn their concerts into epic battles? Hell yes. But at its heart, Battle of the Bands is about twin sisters and their found family, a band called Heatseekers. Now, I could spend this entire presentation just talking about Battle of the Bands, but I really wanted to talk to you guys about how I made Battle of the Bands. So if any of the art on the screen is appealing to you, if anything that I just said, and also I'll tease at things, but like if you have any questions on that, there are, our social media people are amazing. There's story breakdowns, and you can find out voice actors and music and bands that we work with and all of that stuff on our social medias. I have them at the end of the slide too. So just know, and I'll answer questions about the show later too if you want, but just for right now, I'm going into behind the scenes stuff. So how did it start? So like I said, there was a golden question that kind of came to me, and that was, what if musicians have elemental powers based on the genre of music that they play? That was like the sinker for me. So this time, creating a show, I started with world. So, there's multiple ways to do it, and we'll go into that in a different part. But Battle of the Bands started very, very world-centric. And what I'll say up here at the top is I am more of a writer. I break out scripts, I write outlines, I do all that kind of stuff for my creative modes. I'm not traditionally a artist or animator, and that's totally okay because there are many, many different ways to create. I just say that up front because I will show you gorgeous art that I did not draw. Nobody leave this club meeting or presentation thinking I drew any of this art. So the artist should be right next to him, but cool. My conscience is clean. Every time I do a talk or a Twitch stream, people are like, your characters are drawn so beautifully. And I'm like, please no, let me give you all of the artist's tags. So a big thing for Battle, when you start thinking about your cartoon show are comps, and especially for Battle, like what are the comps for Battle? What are the shows and movies that kind of get you in the mindset? And you use those sometimes in pitch meetings because it latches people on to, like, oh, I'm going to get in the general idea of where they are. I remember starting off and I didn't like comps because I didn't want people to start thinking of Metalocalypse the second I pitched them Battle of the Bands. But for the time that you have to pitch, it does kind of at least get people in the ballpark, and then you can tell them about what's going on. So the big ones for me with Battle are Scott Pilgrim and Pokemon. So Battle of the Bands is an adult show. We're 2D animated. And the reason why I like Scott Pilgrim is because everybody in Battle of the Bands is an adult. They're, I think our youngest character is 24. So they're professional adults. They play music. They're touring, they're driving bands, they're doing the long haul of being in a band. We're not, the, kids in the garage, mom's turning off the power because they're too loud. Like those stories have already been told. So, I like Scott Pilgrim because it's the same kind of vibe of like adults, relationships, heartbreaks, there's kind of some battles, there's fantasy. So that's a really big one for us. And Pokemon, that's the easiest way for me to get an executive to get the elemental power thing. Avatar is the second one. Sometimes people know Pokemon over Avatar, so that's the only reason I go with that one first. But yeah, so it's kind of like I just said, a combination of that like fantasy and, band kind of mentality. So, Lord of the Rings is a big one, Avatar, and Battle is a really, really big show. As much as you'll see on our social media or even the art that I put in here, we really talk about 6 characters. You'll see these 6 characters over and over and over again. We have so many more characters. I grew up loving anime, and I think the big thing that I loved about anime, and one of my favorites was Full Metal Alchemist, which we talk a lot about behind the scenes, is there are so many characters, just like every anime, but the way that that creator moves motifs around and themes that affect, this party, and then it also affects this other party over here is really important. And Battle has really, really big arcs, really, really big arcs. So, I'm kind of right now, just for social media reasons, chained to these 6 characters, but trust me, I'm the same one. I'm over here like, I want to tell you about the 20 other characters that I can't talk about. So Full Metal is a really good example. And then of course, all of the rock and roll, School of Rock, Metalocalypse, Brutal Legends, Airheads is one of my favorite movies of all time. If you want to see Brendan Fraser, the actor from The Mummy, play a heavy metal dude, watch Airheads. And a big one animation-wise, and I actually own this book. This is a photo that I took on the side there. If you've never seen the Freak of the Week music video, it's by a band called Freak Kitchen. I do not remember the artist. I feel so bad, but it's made by the company Forche, and there's legacy Disney animators and whatnot on it. And I was late to this music video. I didn't know what this band was. I'd never seen this video, and somebody who eventually became our prop artist, John Dewey, sent me this and was like, oh, this is going to be your favorite thing ever. And I was like, wow, this is my favorite thing ever. Thank you. So it's an incredible music video. And we send it to all our animators and storyboard artists when we did the pilot. So it was really weird watching something where you're like, oh, this is exactly what I want to do. Cool. So the idea and inception of Battle of the Bands really came in 2017. Like I said, I started with the world, and then the next step is characters, right? You got to fill out this world. It kind of was an easy template because we knew that we were doing bands, or at least I did. I was like, I think I want a band, but we can have solo artists. We can do a bunch of different things here. But it really molded out to, I want a power metal band. I'm putting the power metal. Metalocalypse has got the black metal, the doom metal, like all of that kind of stuff. I want the power metal. So it was easy to be like, we need a drummer character. We need a singer character. We need a bassist. We need, those bands usually have 2 guitarists. Cool. So that kind of like built out that structure inherently from there. So, you know, I got a wonderful character artist, Charlie Nagelhout, who still works on the project to this day. We started drafting out some characters. And then eventually just from talking and, you know, getting excited of like, hey, I have a new thing that I'm working on. I'm out of college. You know, I've been working in animation. I actually networked, golden word again, and partnered with my still to this day producer, who I will bring up more so later, Hunter Peterson. And he really helped me scope out more of where we wanted this to go and have it, you know, start to become real, which is, you know, daunting and also fun. I made a basic 2-pager, which I will go into what that means in a bit here. And I wrote out basic plot lines. So literally all we had for like this beginning inklings of a cartoon show was the art that you're seeing and then a Word document. That's basically all we had, nothing fancy. So we kind of worked on and off again, you know, it's my show. So, you know, like I, you know, spent time working and establishing myself in the production field and stuff like that. But I also, you know, like in the back burner was like, how do I make Battle Advance? How do I make this happen? How do we make it more real? And that, you know, really came from collaboration. But 2019 was the year that things changed. Things changed. There was like, you know, it was like a, you know, waterfall exploding down on us because the whole plot, all of the characters pretty much to a bit changed. Everything became more adult. The band became more serious. It had a goofy joke name at first, and that's when we came with Heatseeker. We're like, oh, yeah, it's a real power metal band. We're making this real. And this is where a lot of my writing took place to where the show is today. Characters' backstories, making them more emotional, making them more gripping, making them more heart aching, but then also relatable. Like it became more of the like, you know, Allissoon, me being out on tour and meeting crazy people and lovely people and like, you know, just being on the road doing the actual thing in between 27 to 2019 really made the show more authentic. And that's, you know, such a good feeling to have. So we updated our 2-pager, and we also at this point made the pitch deck. And I'll explain the difference between the two. But at this point we had a pitch deck and we hired a graphic designer. He's actually the gentleman who does our logos as well. His name is Aaron Nestor. And he made the pitch deck, you know, like put backsplashes, made it super rock and roll. It was super cool. You had this whole PDF of all the characters. It was the first time we ever seen everything super, super professionally laid out. And we actually got to go pitch at Frederator. It was super, super cool. We actually did a full storyboard pitch, which was insane. I like the classic, you know, like point at the boards, do impressions of what you think the characters sound like. It was very crazy. And at that time, we, you know, like we're networking, golden word, and we're collaborating with a lot of people. Our producers that joined in at this step of the project were Leland Cox and Danny Jacob. And Danny Jacob is the composer for Phineas and Ferb, the whole show. So he was on our show. He's also like used to be in like an 80s hair metal band. He's like the coolest person I've ever met. So it was like we had the older generation, and then I'm the new like heavy metal crazed girl. So he walked us into Disney. So we got to pitch at the end of 2019 to Disney Animation. Of course, I went in there with the same energy level as you're seeing right now. I was wearing a leather jacket. I think I had a Slayer shirt on. I had something like crazy where it was like Disney was not ready for me, and that was totally okay. Because I went in there kind of knowing, I was like, we're an adult show. I don't know what ending this meeting is going to have. They were so lovely and so nice and gave actually really, really good notes. Of course, both Frederator and Disney passed, or else I'd be telling you about how my show got picked up by Frederator or Disney. But it was a really good opportunity, and the doors were always open. Still have contacts with those people. So, you know, like every pitch is always ends on a good note, because even if it says no, you know, you just know more people, and maybe something else you come up with is for that person. Other things in 2019 that we did have going into these pitches, like Frederator and Disney, was we had an animatic of a music video. We don't use that song anymore in production, but we did have a song at one point. We have a new one now, but had that. We had all the storyboards for a whole pilot. We had a script, and we had the first bands join the project. So the big thing about my show that I really wanted was, because I was meeting bands like before the inception of this, is I was like, how do we work with real life bands? Like, how do we get them to be cameos? How do we get to, have, our fictional band Heatseeker meet other people along the road, kind of like Scooby-Doo style or something like that. And it happened. Our first band was the Hawkings. They're hard rock. I've talked to those dudes probably every day. It's hilarious. We play video games together. It's great. Like they're out in Sweden. I have never been there before. They play hard rock. They're amazing. And kudos to them, because they were the first band that we had on the project. But we, all the way until today, have insanely big bands. We have small indie artists. And that was really like the best thing for Battle of the Bands, was, like showcasing smaller artists as well as dream, like, oh my God, I can't believe these people emailed me back, kind of artists. At this point, we had Matt DePanny join the team. He is the bassist for the band The Mowglis. He also is in a band called Social Order right now. But the big theme that I will talk about him later with is he's the tour manager for the Game Grumps. So if you already can start putting puzzle pieces together, there's a little bit of how next steps happened. We also had Michael Nana join the team as our creative director. He is an amazing storyboard artist and animator and a good friend of mine. And the best part about having him on the team to this day is A, he makes things happen, and B, he is the best source of things that I can't answer. Like, yes, I've been in animation production for a very, very long time, but I'm not going to stand there and talk for a storyboard artist or, elaborate on things that I never want to be that person. So I always want to surround myself with the people that, build me up and then, can take charge of the things that they do. And Michael is the perfect example. He's worked at 1.5 million studios and things that I'm sure you guys all love. So Michael's great. And then, of course, the craziest thing was walking into Disney Animation, being able to say, oh, yeah, we have Aaron Hansen on the project, was mind-blowing. He is the nicest dude, always nice. He comes up way later in this presentation as well. But Aaron was our first voice actor confirmed. He actually played a role, not the one that he does to this day, but he was the first voice actor. So he's been around a lot longer, even amongst the other incredible names. So yeah. 2020 though, I just noticed my laptop battery is slowly dying, but we will make it there. I have my charger, it's fine. 2020 though, I always call the groundbreaking year. And I know that was the year that the planet decided to not be good. But for us, it sucked because 2020 was a really good year for Battle of the Bands, but in any other way was not. Because 2020, we had this amazing opportunity to work with Max Monroy and change our entire art style. And I would say, there's so many different reasons as to where we are today, but the biggest one is Max. Max goes by Drunken Fix on Twitter and Instagram. He's the creator of the webcomic Vamp Sabbath. I literally just shot my shot. I just messaged him one day and was like, do you do freelance? Do you do commissions? Like I didn't even know how to approach him because I was such a fan for a long time. And he got back to me, and that drawing of Brooke there, she's one of our twin sisters, Brooke, is the first drawing that he did. I commissioned him to do a test. It wasn't a test. He never needs to test, but it was just kind of like hey, are you interested? Can I pay you to draw one of our characters? And receiving that in my email inbox was whoa. And thankfully he had enough time to work on the show, and it changed. It put so much more fire behind us. In 2020, in July, we started the production of the pilot that we're still working on with Broken Arrow. And Broken Arrow is, remember my first producer, Hunter Peterson, that is his production company. So he has been so generous with his time and his patience and his energy, and just so incredible that's why Battle of the Bands got the opportunity to do this, is he believed so much in me and my idea, and then we shaped this team around it. We also got to start working with executive producer Hunter Bergen of AFI. I just told you how much I loved My Chemical Romance, so you can only imagine having somebody from the band AFI broke my brain. He is incredible, a titan of music, right? But also he draws comics too. So it was like the best, like we found a music and a comic person. It was like the best combination in the world. So we in 2020 in that late summer, we had a full crew. We had writers, we had background artists, we had prop artists, we had storyboard animators, editors, sound mixers. We were like a real production, and it happened fast. And the only thing that I can really amount it to is luck. It was like there's so much luck that was happening, and I'd taken all of the knowledge that I knew from the shows that I had been on, and showrunners that I had looked to and watched. Like we were, I always attribute our crew to a band, which I know is very cliche, but we were like this scrappy 2D independent animated show that was getting made. It was crazy. Then comes, we finish our script, right? And we're getting all these crazy artists and these connections. We filled out our voice acting cast. And to this day, the names on this list baffle me to this day. Obviously, we had Erin, who is incredibly amazing. But, we somehow got Erica Mendez. Like, I slipped into her Twitter DMs and just asked her. And she was like, yeah. And she plays Aguretsuko, which is a super big comp. She plays Roko on Kill la Kill. She is so many amazing things. Then somehow we got Sarah Natacheni, who, like, our big comp is Pokemon. I had to hide my Pokemon sleeve when talking to her because I got so embarrassed. I was like, oh my God, she doesn't know how much of a Pokemon nerd I am. But she plays Ash Ketchum. Insane. And, Erica Ishii and Mari Williams. And it just came from, being nice and knowing people's boundaries and networking, and then also just, the networks that I had already kept. Erica, I actually met at USC in the game design school because we would partner up a lot with Geek and Sundry right when like people were starting to do like Twitch and like gaming culture was starting to get really, really popular. I had met Erica and we had kept in contact, and they are one of the sweetest people in the entire world. And so the second we had a really cool, badass bassist, I was like, oh, Erica Ishii, let me hit her up. So, it's really building those relationships. You never know who knows who, and where it's going to lead you. We had a new pitch deck. We had a full pitch deck. It was the first time that we ever had Max's art in a pitch deck. And that was a showstopper. That's why I really wanted to mention Max. Because every time we sent it to a voice actor, I am so confident that the reason why people got back to us so quickly was like, Max's art is insane. It really showed people. We submitted to South by Southwest. We were pitching to Fox Animation and Paradigm and a whole bunch of other places. We got 10 bands confirmed right now. And I also want to take this opportunity to say, we're not just rock and roll and heavy metal. I clearly scream that. Like I just look like that, but we have ska bands, we have country artists, we have pop people, a lot of electronica, EDM, industrial, all a gospel, Latin, all sorts of stuff. So please, that's a big thing that we talk about in pitching too, is like, we're not just, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And no. We cover a whole lot of different things because music is a huge, big community. And the other two things that really happened in 2020, because we were public about our art, is we somehow got TikTok popular. We had a lot of social media success, a lot of it thanks to our voice actors. And we launched merch, which was crazy. So 2021, this stuff is actually really, really recently, and I found out I could share this. So this is a slide that might not have made it in today. So we just recently got picked up by CAA, which is a really big talent agency here in Los Angeles. They also rep the Game Grumps. And the Game Grumps are now executive producers on the project. So Aaron went all the way from being our amazing godsend of a voice actor, Wayne's World, we're not worthy, to now he's an executive and invested in the project, making it happen, which is mind-boggling to me. We have a head writer and a co-showrunner to me. I cannot tell you who they are as of yet, but they have made a cartoon that I'm sure you guys all like that is already out. You can view it. So he's amazing. I guess I said he, but he's amazing. Let your mind go crazy. And then the thing that we're waiting for, in 2021 right now, is if the series will get picked up. So that's the big question. You can ask it at the end too. Oh, I'm getting slacked. I hope it's not my boss. Like what we're waiting for is the place that we can, start making 10 episodes, the full season. Everybody always asks, like, where can I watch the pilot? Where can I watch the pilot? And we have this weird tandemness that a lot of productions don't do, but because we're independent, it kind of is that way, is we're pitching and we're also in production. So because we're doing two things at once, it goes a little slower in the pipeline. But we're really hoping at some point to get that series pickup and then, bring on more people and make it possible. So you can't watch it right now. So every day I say that on my Twitch stream. So now that we're getting into pitching, and this is the last part of my presentation, is talking about pitches. These are the things that I leave my pitch like focusing for Battle of the Bands, because they're really important to me. It's my story. It's the story that I want to tell. So the first one is, after a year without concerts, this is the animated concert that we all need. Like we were in the pandemic, we weren't going to shows. This is really important. Two, and I just mentioned this, we feature many diverse genres of music, and we have real life musician cameos, which is super, super rad. Three, and almost one of the biggest ones, is I truly want more female identifying musicians, especially instrumentalists, in hard rock and heavy metal. The main band, it's a power metal band, like I said. We have a lot of female identifying musicians on the show. Of course, I want female identifying musicians in every genre. But speaking as somebody from the heavy metal scene, it is very male identifying dominated and has been. Of course, there's pioneers and amazing ladies that have, paved the path, but, and a lot of them being, singers and people with amazing pipes and whatnot. But, I want more younger people, no matter what you identify as, to pick up drumsticks, to pick up the bass, to pick up the guitar, and really just have fun with music. And as we show in our character designs and our crew especially, is like that all genres of music are for any person, regardless of their age, race, identification, orientation, origin, nationality, religion. The whole love letter about Battle of the Bands is that you don't need to look a certain way or belong to a certain scene to enjoy the type of music that you like. And that is, if Battle of the Bands could ever teach you anything, that's all I want it to. Awesome. So now we're going to talk about making the pitch. So those are my big pitch points for my thing. I'm going to grab my laptop charger, so 2 seconds.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my Zoom UI is really messing up. It won't tell me if I'm unmuted or not. The chat's not updating. So Maggie, since you're a co-host, you and Claudie, if I end my Zoom process right now, it should still keep the meeting.
Okay.
So I'm gonna do that really quick and come back. And then I'm gonna resume recording after I come back, okay?
Okay. All right.
So 1 sec.
Am I good to go? Sorry about that interruption.
Oh, sorry,
there.
just my Zoom UI like does this thing where it freezes on me. So I'm gonna just restart my Zoom really quick and then resume the recording after, and then I can just stitch it together later. So just give me 1 second, okay? Sorry.
No worries. I'm back.
So.
Yeah, it'd be pretty metal if you guys all signed the attendance sheet.
It's great so far, by the way. I just came back, like I literally closed it and then it opened again by itself. So everything's working now.
All right.
I don't know why it does that, but I'm gonna make sure that I'm recording again.
We take this brief intermission to let you attendance sheet.
Okay, I resumed recording.
Okay.
It should be good.
Awesome. Well, here's the really, really fun part. I don't know if it is. We'll find out together. So making the pitch. So those 4 things that I told you about, those are like, I don't know, I guess like the stingers at the end of my pitch that, like if they were like executives, right? If they were listening to me at all, those are the 4 things that I'm like, please remember these when we leave and depart this Zoom meeting. So how do you get to that meeting? How does that ideation process kind of happen? And the thing that I will always say, there's so many disclaimers in this presentation, but that's the really big one, right? Is there is no right way to do any of this. If there was a right way to do this, we'd all be doing it and we'd all have cartoon shows and it would be absolutely amazing, but there isn't. So, take what I say, what like a teacher your, anybody else in your family and whatnot, like with a grain of salt, because, it's a fun frontier that anything could happen, which, as I wrote there, is fun. But trust me, I realize it's daunting. It's very, very daunting. But the big 3 steps that I usually go through in creating a pitch or helping somebody with their pitch is ideation, making a deck, and then pitching. So ideation, where do you even start? Thing I want to say up front, you can create in any medium. So if you're an artist and you want to pop open, like if it's comfortable to pop open Procreate or Photoshop, start drafting down characters and just doodling away, hell yeah. If you're more, like open up a Google Doc and start putting in ideas of like, this is the character's age and their strengths and their weaknesses. If you want to work like that, if writing music gets you inspired to create a show, if it's more of, like you are from that techie background and you want to code out a level, or, or you're more architecturally, like graphic design, you want to build out a map and kind of do that. There literally is no wrong medium to start creating. The 2 big ones, and I hate like putting it into 2 boxes, but like characters first, world first. I told you with Battle that it was world first. It was, like started very, very fantasy, and then I started with characters. The thing I will say though, and this was great, I loved the way this man at Fox Animation, when I pitched to him, he gave me this great quote. He said, characters are king. So what is going to sell your show is the characters. You could come up with the coolest world in the entire world, but if no one likes or cares or gets invested in your characters, it really isn't going to help you, So like your characters are going to be really important, and it's what, people latch on to. But you can start either way. And the big thing too, when you're creating, whether, you're invested in the world and you start getting your characters going, is the inciting incident, right? Why do we care? What's the cliffhanger? It's usually like in the first episode, right? The pilot, right? Like what is going to make somebody watch episode 2? How do the characters start the adventure? Where is the show going? And inciting incidents happen in both, shows that are very episodic, so they have that huge, timeline, or in shows that are, traditionally like sitcom based, stuff like that. There still is something that starts it off. So an example, Avatar: The Last Airbender, the big inciting incident is Sokka and Katara finding Aang in this. If you have not watched the first episode, you've had many years, so this is a spoiler you can deal with. They find Aang frozen in the iceberg, and he unmelts, and they talk about all the dangers and the implements of Fire Nation and the Avatar's legacy. So the inciting incident is discovering Aang. That kicks off this adventure, because if they didn't do that, Sokka and Katara, show would probably be really boring. Like Sokka would be making one-liners to his sister, and his sister would keep slapping him in the face with water. The other example of like a show that's more sitcom-y based is SpongeBob. So SpongeBob's first episode, if you don't know what it is, it's the Help Wanted episode. So it's the episode where he literally, pops out of bed, gets ready, as he does in every episode, but it's when he gets his job as a fry cook at the Krusty Krab. He goes in there, he kind of flubs up his job interview, but he's really excited, and Mr. Krabs gives him his, job. And that job he continues for the whole rest of the show. So even though SpongeBob doesn't have, like a, you can watch episodes here and there, you don't need to follow them in order, it does still have an inciting incident that sets up his character for the rest of the show. So it really is an important aspect of creating what your plot. So the 2 decks, I know I said I'd talk about this. So the 2-pager was the term I kept using when I was beginning Battle of the Bands. And then there's like the full deck. There are many different kinds of decks. Some people, you can ask teachers, you can ask professors. There's a whole different ones. These are the 2 that I usually have on hand. And they serve kind of 2 different purposes. And I'll tell you the very, very realistic reason. Sometimes when you send your deck to someone at a development company, the development department, right, of a studio, they will be reading 10, 12, 15, 20 plus decks. Most of the time, they probably will start with the 2-pager, because if I had to read 10 to 20 different 12-page decks, I'd go insane. So, that really is the emphasis of having something short formed that you can hook somebody so you can send them the long one. Sometimes out of the gate, they'll want the whole thing, which is super exciting and it makes you feel really good. And you're like, someone cares, yay. But a lot of the time you have to do as much as you can with as little as you can show them. So the 2-pager is still going to have your log line. I'm sure you guys talk about that in class, but it's like the initial hook, at least mentioning like a name or kind of the structure of what's going on. My log line for battle is supposed to be a little tongue-in-cheek because it's supposed to have that, like heavy metal spirit to it. So that's why it's got questions that I immediately get to quirk back at people. But you can make it fun. A log line should be fun and it should be memorable. On a 2-pager, you're probably only going to have room for main characters. And as somebody, like, I'm speaking to you guys as like friends or friend, I have so many characters and I want to talk about lore and you guys are all creators and artists too. So you want to put in as many things as you can. You just can't. Someone's going to come and tell you. For me, it's Hunter Bergen on our show. Hunter Bergen will come in and be like, Allissoon, you can only talk about the 2 sisters. And I'm like, no, but there's so much more. But, it's really characters that drive the plot at this point. Anything that drives the plot. You get a little space to talk about story plot with your inciting incident. That's really important. Map out like, this is kind of how the show goes. Brief world, so brief. Sometimes when I'm introducing battle, all I get to say is, it's a world, that's broad, that has elemental powers for musicians. That's it. I don't get to mention where they are, like, country-wise or city-wise or anything like that. If your show's in space, probably should say that. If your show's, an alternate 1980s or something like that, definitely say that. But you at this point, it's just really bare bones. You can't go into like, lore and backstories, which sucks. And then the big thing for your 2-pager, honestly, though, is your big themes. Because I always kind of consider it's what that person's going to remember about your deck. So like I said, they might be reading a ton of decks, but maybe they like, I like Battle of the Bands. This is pretty cool. What are the key big themes that I want them to take away if they're going to send it to, to somebody, an office over, or they're like, hey, you should take a look at this. It's a pretty good cartoon show. I don't know where that accent came from, but it's fine. That's how all executives talk. But, like when somebody wants to like, hey, I kind of like this. I want to give it a reread or send it to somebody, that maybe has a little bit more power. They're going to try and like mention the keyword. So I usually like to kind of like give those to them. So like found family, right? That's my big one is bands, people come from all different walks of life, but in a band, you get to be kind of like vulnerable with people. You're singing songs, there's lyrics, there's emotion. So I kind of consider bands families. And that's really something that like, if somebody skimmed my PDF, that's what I want them to take away and tell somebody else about. And then contact info. I got to contact you. And then, so the full deck, instead of 2 physical pages, right, you have more pages to flesh out. I would say I put 10 and 12 on there. In my experience from all the pitch decks that I've either read myself or made, I haven't gone past 14 or 15 because once again, if you send this to them, you're not trying to overload them with information and you don't know how many they're reading per day. So it's almost like you get more pages to space things out. And this is really the time to make your deck scream your show. Like I'm talking like from a graphical standpoint, like make the background make sense, make the font make sense. Like, if you're putting on art or things like that, shape it to, work in your advantage. If your show is horror themed, like how can you incorporate that on every page? Every droplet on the pitch deck should be very aesthetically in tuned to what you're talking about, because it's more fun that way. When you get a deck that's full like horror, right? You get a spooky like Halloween time deck. It's so much fun when every aspect of it is like that, because it's like the deck is like a character. It's like, ooh, it's fun media that you have. So this deck usually has the same thing. Log line, you can put the overall story plot and you can put in the episode 1. Like if there's, a big moment that starts your epic, or if there's a funny comedy moment that, like totally drives the whole thing, definitely have the ability or a slide, right, to go in for that. Character bios, you're probably going to have the same ones from the 2-pager, but, if there's a villain, if there's, an antagonist, if there's more characters, but it still should be really plot driving characters. A fun tip is if you have some supporting cast, like maybe, you know, some fun like mini bosses or family members or things, you know, that make sense for your pitch, right? You could put them all on the same page of like, these are secondary characters, and you put 2 to 3 on the same page of like, you know, these are other fun moments, but you definitely still want it to be, because you only have a certain amount of pages, you definitely still want it to be main plot driving characters. You can have more time for the world, you can have that big themes page. And the fun thing about the deck, if it works for your style of creating or your style of show, for battle it kind of didn't, but for another show I'm working on it did, is throwing on some episode ideas. You know, picking like 3 to 4 of them, and you can put in kind of like Netflix blurbs, you know, when you pick something on Netflix and it gives you like a 2 to 3 sentence review. Do that, because what that is good at showing is that you got good ideas, you got more than one good idea, you know, and you've really thought about your series. Like you're a creator presenting and you know the ins and outs of this whole story. So it's kind of fun, especially if you have memorable moments, if there's a really emotional part of the show that isn't present in the wacky characters. Like episodes idea are like, oh, this show can be dramatic, and oh, it can be funny. Like it's a really good place to use those muscles. And then if you do have, you know, not everybody has this, but if you do have something special, like, you know, you're partnering up with a school or an animation studio, or you do have an actor, or, you know, you have somebody on the crew that you do want to highlight, absolutely put that in the deck. That's going to help, you know. And then of course, contact page. So making a deck, and like this is, I guess like making the deck might not be the right title for the slide, but like what else can you have in your deck, right? People sell shows in so many different ways. There are people that sell shows from napkin drawings. And on the other side of the spectrum, there are people who sell shows, they make an entire pilot, it's colored, it's voice acted, it's mastered, it's printed, and it's up on YouTube, and they sell it that way. The spectrum is so big. So that's why I really want to emphasize, because I remember when I was younger in college and especially high school, right, when I was trying to get into film school and whatnot, I was like, I'm not an artist. Like I don't do art. That's not, I've lurked on DeviantArt, but you know, like I don't do that kind of, I know this ancient website, I don't even know that website's still around. But like, you know, I didn't do that stuff, and I got discouraged because I was like, oh, I can't work in cartoons, I can't draw. That was literally like what I thought in my high school career. But it's like, you know, there are some people attach pilot scripts, some people break out character descriptions, they write outlines. I'm a little bit more in that box. Some people, for the art stuff, you know, some people do have posed group shots. They have expression sheets. They have full body turnarounds. You can put in reference images. It's whatever you want to get the idea of your show. It's a pitch deck. You're not, you know, reference things, you know, put where it's from, you know. But if you're just trying to illustrate an idea, you know, you can put in whatever you want. People, you know, Pinterest boards, you know, things that you're finding on Google that like, this really is trying to sell what idea I'm talking about. Put it in there. That's the same idea with comps, right? I don't own Pokemon. I wish I did. But you know, like mentioning that isn't, and putting it in my deck isn't bad. It's just helping someone clue into what I'm talking about. And any other media, because you want to be rememberable. That's the really big thing about your pitch deck. Everybody can create a deck. All of you can. All of you can create a deck, but you want it to be memorable. That's what you stand out from that pile. So, you know, some people put in music. That was our big thing, is we had a full song that somebody could listen to and be like, this is Heat Seeker's song. We wanted Heat Seeker to kind of be like the Gorillaz, like a real life animated band, like Death Clock and Metalocalypse. So that was our really big theme. People have presentations. Some people, if they really like 3D printing or even just sculpting in clay, they'll sculpt out their characters, 3D models. And some people have animatics and, you know, VO samples and stuff like that. So it really is, I know this is the most like cliche Disney answer, but it really is what's fun to you and what you think is going to make your project stand out from hundreds of other projects. So the big thing, you know, now into pitching, it's kind of like the last thing I want to talk about here. My big 3 tips for pitching is be yourself, networking, golden word, and practice. So being yourself, the number one thing about pitching that I think just needs to be said out loud is pitching is as much about your story, but it's about pitching yourself. And inherently, your story is probably, you know, whatever cartoon it is, whether it's drama, comedy, action, fantasy, you know, a documentary, whatever, it's probably going to have a lot of you in it. You know, you're bringing up memories, you're bringing up, you know, you're probably putting in emotions that you felt, journeys that you've been on, things that you've struggled with. Like art is very personal, right? Art is an incredibly personal journey. But when you're in there in a pitch meeting, you're selling yourself as the person who should tell the story. It's like, yes, this story is awesome, but I need to be the one to tell it. And that's, you know, really important. So it's important to be professional. And this is Allissoon's biggest piece of advice. Be casual. It's a conversation. You're in there talking about cartoons. It's supposed to be fun, you know? So as much as, you know, like being prepared, right? And knowing what you're talking about and knowing your presentation, there is nothing that like buzz kills a pitch more than if it sounds like you're giving a school science presentation or it sounds like you're reading off a teleprompter, you know? And it's this is so much easier said than done, right? But it definitely like, and that's why I wrote that to the side. You want to be the friend that they want to talk to after the pitch. You know, like they also want to get excited about your story. So if you're excited and you feel loosey-goosey and you're having fun and you're telling a story, it sings so much better than being, you know, stiff and stuff like that. You're going to have to be clear, quick and concise, which is something that I have to practice all the time because I will talk forever. Because you won't be able to say everything. You just won't. As much as you can't put everything in the pitch deck, you're not going to be able to sit there for an hour like I did today and just, you know, talk their ears off about your show. You might get only 15 minutes. You might get maybe 30. That's pretty long. I will say it's usually 10 to 15 minutes. And you want to make sure it's engaging and not just, you know, a wall of text. So, you know, you want to give a little to get them to ask questions. That's kind of like the goal that I usually have going into a pitch is like, I get my little smirky face on and I'm like, well, if I can't tell them about lore and the other characters, how can I get them to ask that by the end of the presentation? So that's usually my little like my goal by the end of the presentation, but it's leading with those strong elements. Networking. We'll finally get this nipped in the bud here. Networking. So you got to be kind. And the really, really big thing is you got to know people's boundaries. Sometimes somebody can't help you. We have all been in that situation. Like, you know, you want to, I like to believe that most people always want to help, but you know, sometimes people can't go to their boss and be like, hey, this is my friend's cartoon show. And it's the same thing I'm sure you guys face with like job opportunities and stuff like that. That's obviously a big thing for networking. You just got to be able to read a room, know people's boundaries. Don't approach somebody or a company to get something out of them because you're just honestly, you're not going to get a meeting that way. And on the receiving end, which if you've never been on it, or you 100% will at some time in your life, you can immediately tell that that's what it's for. Like when someone sends like kind of like a little bit of a disingenuous, you know, like, oh, hey, can you read my whole script and tell me what you think about it? Like, first off, I don't have the time for that. And you just want something out of me. So it's a little polarizing. So just, you know, if somebody does ask you or give you that opportunity, by full means make that communication, but don't immediately expect somebody, you know, at the, you know, position or the company that you like to be able to give you that much time. You know, ask them, if you do get those opportunities, ask them about their stories instead of trying to get something. Ask them about their careers in animation, because that's going to make them want to learn about you. You know, it's swapping stories, right? You know, and joining, just like you guys all are doing, communities in college. If Twitter is a fun place for you, if there's other websites, you know, once things get safer, you know, like conventions and panels and talks and stuff like that are great places to meet people, you know, not only that might get interested in your OCs or your characters or the stories that you're working on, but they might be like coworkers or collaborators that you didn't even know existed. So, you know, always be open to feedback and meeting new people. And just, I hate using the word like common sense, because I'm sure you guys are all like the smartest people in the world. You know, it's just like, read a room. You know, networking is always fun, but just know that sometimes some people can't help you, and it's not because they don't want to. Practice. The last one here, the big part of the pitch is practicing. Whether, you know, You know that the day's coming up tomorrow, or you got it a couple of weeks out. Practice, practice, practice. And you can practice with whatever materials feel comfortable. I usually do pitch with a presentation, and that's only because a lot of the pitches I've done recently in the last 2 years have obviously been digital. So I've had to have something to show them. But, you know, I've done a storyboard pitch before. I've done, you know, just showing up in like a dinner situation. Those are very weird, but, you know, you just got to kind of talk. You don't have any art behind you. You got to sell them on your words. It's very strange. So it's really what, you know, the meeting calls for, and then also what's comfortable to you. This, you know, some really pro tips I'll give on practicing though is, as much as you should do it with yourself, you should time yourself, you should run down everything, is do pitches to close friends. Because I understand how, you know, like if you're not public about your project or you haven't copywritten it or anything like that, it's really scary to be like, I don't want someone to take my thing, you know, like that's we're all artists. We're all very, very scared of that. So find people that you trust, you know, whether they're coworkers, family, teachers, friends, and, you know, feel comfortable being able to share everything. Pitch with people who might know what you're working on. Maybe, you know, they've heard you talk about it at lunch before, or, you know, they see you online making these characters or stuff like that. But make sure you pitch to people who don't know what your idea is, because they're going to be a really clean, cold slate for, you know, like what makes sense to them, what's confusing. And you got to remember, and I had to have somebody remind me of this too, we, like us creators, all of us, right? Us creators making our own thing, we've been sitting in the story for months and years, and like you really like sometimes gloss over the things as like truth of like, oh yeah, of course the character does that. And then someone will be like, but why? Why does the character do that? Because to you, it's like, oh, it's second nature. Like I've been in it for so long. So really find people that might not know what you're doing, because they're going to be the truest example of, oh, I just saw someone type blank slate. Yes, a blank slate kind of a person. Pitch to people in the animation industry, which, you know, you guys are all at school for, you know, so you got wonderful students and friends to lean on, but pitch to people who aren't in the industry, because that's the perfect example of somebody turning on, you know, work in the industry, you know, to like cartoons. So they're going to be the last and best steadfold of things that don't make sense. Like they're going to be the first person to be like, why does the character go there instead of there? Why don't they just do the like that thing, you know, and stuff like that? And that'll really save you those, you know, inconsistencies then in the pitch meeting, where sometimes it can, you know, throw you off your game and, you know, scare you. And so I've totally been there. So it's like ironing those out, especially with people who don't know your show and don't know animation like as their career. Best people, and they're honestly probably going to be the most excited to talk to you too, because they don't get to do that a whole lot. And the last thing I will say, and this is like, I say this to everybody that I work with their pitches too, because it doesn't usually an idea that comes to you firsthand, is practice with people interrupting you for questions, because you will not believe, like most people will wait until after and do a QA and stuff like that. But you won't believe, if you're in a room and you have not role played that situation, it will sometimes throw you for a loop. If like immediately after, like, here's the first character, and you're about to click the pointer to the next one, and somebody jumps in with a good question or something like that, really throws you off your game. So just my advice to you, just practice both ways. You should always have fun. Pitches should always be fun. You should always be willing to work with others and other people's ideas. Be married to the things, I always use the term marry, be married to the things that you like and stand up for the things that you like. You don't want to be too malleable, right? And too bendable, you know, to other people's ideas. You want to show yourself as a leader, right? But also be yes and, right? That improv game, you know, like yes and people's ideas. Because a lot of the best ideas that we as a team have made for battle, or I've made, have come from somebody's yes and patience. There will be weeks where all of a sudden you get responses to your emails and you get multiple things set up and everything's moving rapid fire. Those are the best weeks. Those are the best weeks. You will have months where people don't get back to you. People are busy. The holiday season, when you get to November, everything just like, and same thing for the music industry, by the way. Like, and once you hit November, everybody is thinking about Thanksgiving and you won't hear from people until January. So it's a really, really slow game. And that's why you probably hear other creators and showrunners be like, took me 4 years to make my show. It took me 5 years to make my show. Don't let that daunt you. It literally is just a weird, long waiting game. But of course it's worth it, because once it does happen, you get to work with, you know, people that you met at UCF, or, you know, you met on Twitter, or, you know, you finally get to be at the studio that you've always dreamed of. So it's such a great ending to a long game. But just, I have to remind myself of this, is always have patience. And real quickly, the big thing I wanted to mention at the end, because this is just really close to my heart, is the difference between a creator and a showrunner. So I have worked in animation production. Once again, I'm on the production side of things. Everybody is working together to make a show, but sometimes there's a little bit of a divide of creative versus production. So a creator, it's a creative role. You create the whole show and story and characters. You know, you're going to be the end all be all to the plot, right? You're the Bible of the story. You know, if anybody has a question on a character, they're coming to you. You know, you get to redline designs and, you know, do edits to storyboards. You know, it's a really fun, it's the top level, right? It's the top level of what you want to be on a cartoon show. You know, you approve everything, you have the final say, and you're, you know, sometimes, schedule allowing, given the space, you know, and time for those creative processes. A showrunner is a production role, and they do help guide creative decisions for and with the creator. But that's why the term run is in there. You run the show. You are the top of every department. You're kind of like the guardian of the series. So if the creator is the, you know, the person getting the whole Bible and book down, you're like the bodyguard for it. You know, you're the second hand to the creator. You make the show happen. You know, and it should be someone the creator super trusts, because you're going to answer for the creator, but always go to the creator with the questions that you don't feel comfortable answering. So, you know, creative passes, but yeah, it's showrunner is schedules, meetings, running point, looking at budgets, and getting things to the creator, but letting them be able to focus on big picture. And I know exactly what your next question is going to be. Don't people often do both? Yes, very classically. You know, it's natural for the creator to be the showrunner. There's so many examples, like Simpsons, Matt Groening, you know, Family Guy, Seth MacFarlane, all the way out until today, Dana Terrace, Alex Hirsch, you know, like, yes, and usually they'll either use the term showrunner, but they mean both, or they'll use creator and they mean both. The reason why I'm telling you this is because you truly want to be a showrunner, which I want all of us to make new stuff and be showrunners, is just please, for old Allissoon, know about production. It's only going to help you, because, you know, if you're coming from that wonderful, you know, trade background of storyboarding or animating, as a showrunner, you're going to be facing writers' rooms and everything that deals with pre-production and everything that deals with animation, and, you know, shipping things overseas nowadays is a lot of, you know, animation stuff, and especially post-production. I feel like post always gets kicked to the last, which makes me sad, because like that's a lot of where my career comes from, is post-production. You know, it's a heavy public speaking role. It's a team leading position, and, you know, that's why, like, people who are really, really good at it, you know, can do creator and showrunner. I just, you know, you know, and you're going to be partnered with so many people too that are going to have your back. Like, you're going to have a post supervisor, you're going to have a supervising director, you're going to have producers in the room, you're going to have your head writer. It's good for you as the creator, you know, to know what everybody's doing and have an idea, right? Because they're going to look up to you. If you're running the show, you're the person that's supposed to stand up for your crew. You're the person in charge. And I've been on a lot of productions where the person who's supposed to be in that role, you know, didn't have that kind of education, and it hurts some people, and that sucks, right? We're all there to make a cartoon. It should be a fun time. So, like, that's why my last thing there was like, it is totally okay to just be a creator. That's like, you know, that's a full-time job. People who do creator and showrunner, it's a lot of work. If you're doing art, you know, I'm writing, which is equally really hard, but, you know, like, if you're doing art or writing scripts and you're also running the show, it's hard. So it's never really talked about, but I do just want to throw out there, you know, there are differences between those job roles, and being a creator is just as flippin' awesome. And then you can depend upon people that you love and you trust to, you know, help oil those wheels and get that show out the door. So yeah. Always say you're an artist, whether you draw, you play music, you write, you design, you map, anything out. Always be confident in calling yourself an artist. Like I told you, when I was younger, I didn't draw, so I thought that didn't mean, that I could be creative. And that's super. And I was playing fucking sax. I was the coolest person in the entire world. I played saxophone, and I thought I wasn't an artist, but I'm joking. But, like really always feel confident. If you're in a room and you're creating something, you're an artist. Just always know that. And yeah, that was it. It was longer than I thought. I apologize. But yeah, that's it. Any questions? My social media is there. I talk a lot about pitching in the animation industry while attempting to play video games poorly. So you can follow me on Twitch. We usually talk about college actually a lot, animation classes and things like that. And of course, if any of the art or characters, or you want to know who Aaron Hansen plays on the show or anything like that, it's all on the Battle of Bands social media.
Wow. Allissoon, that was so awesome. Like I was just completely enamored the whole time. I have like a document that has just questions in it that I was gonna ask to start off in case no one else had anything at the beginning or at any point. But then I started taking notes in that same document. Like I didn't even plan on doing that. I just started doing it automatically. So thank you for that. That presentation was like even better than I thought it was going to be.
Oh,
It's
thank
so much
you.
more informative even.
I got so excited.
It's awesome. So yeah, I'm gonna wait for a second and see if anybody else has questions first, and if not, I definitely do. So, what does everybody think?
Yeah. Oh, there's comments. That's right. There's chats on the
Don't
side.
be shy.
Wait
You
for
can
them to
type in.
unmute.
Yeah, you can type it in the chat. You can unmute. Okay. Diana says, do you have any advice on how to network respectfully? I want to try and network, but I don't want them to think I'm trying to use them.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. Did I mute myself? Am I being an idiot?
No, you're good. You're good.
No, you're good.
Okay, cool. That's a great question. Diana, yeah, honestly, like I am the queen. You can ask anybody on my crew. I'm the queen of cold emails. Like I will just cold email people. And that's how, honestly, a lot of bands, like we got Ska-Tune Network that way. I hit them up because I think they're the coolest person in the world. Some of our bigger metal bands, I'll find their very, very public general, like, hey, if you want to book the band, you can email us here, so I'm not like digging or fishing, but it's really just being, like shooting your shot, because I personally always respect that. But like if someone doesn't respond, because a lot of the times on a cold email, especially like if you're really trying to actively network, some people won't respond. Sometimes you'll get that very finicky left on red, kind of thing, that's kind of the time to know, like, cool, you shouldn't hit them up 4 more times in the next 3 days, so like people will generally, like if they can get back to you, be like, hey, thanks so much for reaching out. And you can, like, that's why I hate using the word common sense, but like especially like you guys being lovely, animation people, and animation people are usually the best, it's just like seeing someone's response where they're clearly kind of ending the convo is usually the best way of reading the room with that common sense. And it is, just being honest and being open of like, hey, I'm interested in, one day making my own show. Do you have any advice? Like I would so much rather get, and anybody would, you guys too, like if you were in that position, I'd so much rather get that kind of an email than here already is my material. Like I'm attaching my 20-page long script and asking them to do something. Like that's usually the surefire way anybody, is able to receive an email and decide from there. So I really encourage networking, and, especially if you can find, like Twitter does all those like portfolio review days. Some of the bigger creators of like those big Nickelodeon shows from our childhood and all that stuff, like do engaging things and give out tips and stuff like that. And being able to comment and meet people through there is kind of like the best networking. So always be open to talk and always be able to know if someone says no, that's it. I hope that answered your question.
Anna said thank you, so I think it did. And it
Okay.
was a great response. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have one real quick.
Hi, I can see
Hi,
you.
I'm
Hello.
Paige. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
So my question is about finances. You said you would contact people for commissions and stuff. Where did the finances come from while you are unattached to a studio?
That is a great question. So a lot of the stuff I will say, because starting off, like the best example, Max. When I got Max to do that first commission, before he did all of the other art that you probably saw throughout the presentation, I paid for that because at this point of where my project was at, and that'll be a decision that you'll make yourself. I wanted that commission. I wanted to bring it back to the crew. So there's definitely costs that you keep track of. You absolutely should, that I did go for because I thought that that was the time and the place. When we started production in July 2020, and when I say production, I do mean that in a very official sense, where that company, Broken Arrow, was paying for they had the budget, and that's signing paperwork and doing all that stuff. So really at that point with Max and everybody else, there was a company, a studio, if you will, in place for that kind of stuff. But everything up until then, I was paying out of my own pocket because it was something that I really cared about.
Okay,
I needed that though, yeah. And once it became like, when we got to that like 2020 spot though, like, and there were like Hunter had been paying for stuff too. It was people who really believed in the project. I will always pay people for, as you should too, anybody doing, work, time, capitalism, like I always want to pay people for their time and their effort and their energy. And yeah, definitely for any, like with Charlie and any, things up until the big one. The big one was definitely people on the crew paying those artists, usually producers. And then, yeah, Broken Arrow was the financier.
And Broken Arrow still finances you?
For the pilot, yes, but as of right now, when we're pitching the series, because it's pitching at that point, right? So we have all the materials. It does become more of the agency and then whoever the distributor is.
Okay, thank you very much.
That was helpful. Yeah, that was a great question. I'm definitely in story mode a lot of the times, but that's why I have producers and people like that. Once it gets to that level, right? Then I don't want to be the speaker for the budget.
Kind of on that same card, I remember, or maybe I'm remembering wrong because my memory can be kind of foggy. When I remember early on you mentioned voice actors, like when I started following the project, and I don't know if that was before you got picked up by Broken Arrow, but did you just reach out to them and they kind of just said yes before they knew like that necessarily you were going to have the money to pay them right away? They just agreed to it, and you're able to say yes, this person is voicing this character. Like they didn't sign a contract yet, basically at that point, or did they? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we had the script for the pilot, and like Aaron was an attachment that we had through a producer. Everybody else, so that slide that oh, I saw the presentation. Oh my god. We're going back in time, everyone. No, this isn't. God, these are questions that I have nobody asks. I'm tearing up. Everybody on the voice acting cast. Our show is SAG because we did submit it to festivals and things like that. So all of these voice actors were paid at scale and rate. So when we do reach out to them, letting them know, hey, this is a SAG production. You will be paid as such. So it was at a level of there were contracts put into place and stuff like that. So I usually don't feel comfortable attaching someone unless there is paperwork down and things like that. There's two different levels to that. Is somebody working for the show? Like these people are putting voice to storyboards, right? So they're working, or are they just attaching their name, right? Are they not going to do VO? Are they not going to animate? But are they like names have reputation and power. It's the entertainment industry. Of course they do, so that's a different level, right? Because they're not putting blood, sweat, and tear energy into the project, but it still needs the communication and the legality just at the level that we had gotten to with the company.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and they're all lovely. I will say, if you ever need voice actors for a project, if you want the voice acting community to like Mulan style come over the hill and swarm you in that snowball, put out a tweet that says that you need a voice actor. You will have so many people just like bum rush your comment section, which is always wonderful. But yeah, for us, we couldn't do those kind of calls. We couldn't do, hey, we're looking for, you know, like for Jamie's character, right? Our first twin up there with the 74 undershirt. I couldn't just be like, hey, I'm looking for, you know, an early 20-year-old, you know, sounding voice, you know, blah, 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 because it's a SAG show. So, you know, like I didn't want to set anybody up for, you know, like I'm sending them my reel. Oh, wait, I'm not SAG, you know. So it definitely went through casting and things like that through our producers.
Okay, so you let that go through them officially, and you can't really like call out for people necessarily until they were the ones doing it. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you are 100%. Like, I'm not stopping anybody from, you know, reach out to your dream. Like I told you, like I straight shoot cold email people all the time. I'll tell you, one of our characters, the DJ character, my first pick for him, and I already told you this was my favorite movie, was Airheads. I wanted Brendan Fraser to play him. I really wanted Brendan Fraser to play him.
Wow.
You know, through our producers, like, you know, like they found out who his agent was and then reached out to them, and he actually very politely said no, but it was like cool that we like made contact with the camp. I was ecstatic for like a whole week straight. But like that is the route that at the level that we're at, and was it Paige, I believe, who asked that wonderful question about budget. You know, it's like in 2020, where my independent show got was like, we do have to go through the channels of like, this person needs to talk to this person to then see if they're available, which I'm incredibly blessed and thankful for. But it does become a little bit more like there are certain processes to follow. So then you're not just like bombarding someone with like a random call out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Does anybody else have any questions?
I do have a question. Do you have like you said that it hasn't gotten picked up yet. Do you have like a strategy for getting picked up? Like the show?
Oh man, if I had one, I'm just kidding. Yeah, we're working at right now with the pilot getting, you know, more finished and pushed along. And really with the Game Grumps CAA thing is CAA will become the place to send it out. We've had communication for the longest time with Netflix and the big streamers, right? Because cable's a little bit dead, you know. It's like the big streamers, Hulu, HBO Max, Disney Plus, Netflix. So those have always been the ones that have really, you know, captivated our eye. But, you know, now having the Game Grumps and CAA, they get to send it, which is kind of cool because CAA represents tons of people, so they come with more reputation, right? They come with a little bit more, you know, firepower, gunpowder than I do or any of my producers. So I actually have a pitch, not next week. I hope it's not next week. I think after for once again for distributors and stuff like that. So it really is kind of, you know, just having whoever has, and it becomes that kind of a game in the entertainment industry. And I talk about this on my Twitch too. It's just like whoever has the biggest name, you know, it's a game of, as much as I'm telling you guys about networking, everything in the entertainment industry is who knows who's connected to whose camp. That's usually a term that's thrown around, like who's in what's camp. Oh, they're represented by, they all have abbreviation names too. And I have dyslexia. So it's like the worst thing in the world where it's like, oh, CAA knows, BFG knows, ICW, like it's all of that kind of talk, and I sit there like with like little like question marks. But yeah, it definitely is, you know, like whoever kind of has the biggest name that can stake their reputation, right? Like I am thankful that Aaron and CAA will, you know, go on their own accord to, you know, knock on doors, and that's really what we're hoping for, you know, in the next, you know, whenever it happens. Long duration of shooting, right? But the second they're done, so they put up all the shots, right? They put up all the storyboards for every shot that deals with the exterior of the pink house. The second that they're done with all of those shots, no matter what order they're in, they take that set, they move it into storage, and they bring out another one. And there's probably, I think at Robot Chicken, there's like 20 different stages going on. So like they're shooting, 20 different stages means 20 different animators. So they're shooting 20 different things and trying to get as many seconds. So animation is always like, how many seconds are you doing? And that's a 2D thing. I'm sure you guys know. It's like a 2D thing, a 3D thing, and it's definitely a stop motion thing because it's usually the slowest of all the animations, So it's like, how many seconds can we get done? How many stages can we get done? What is the fastest process of that? So that's why it's very live action based, because it's not like you can open up 4 different Maya files and just start whatever project you want. There's a scheduler on stop motion productions that really hone in. Cool. We have to shoot all of these this week and we have to scrap this set because we got to bring in the new one, is usually how stop motion productions work. I didn't think I was going to talk about stop motion today either. This is great. Who loves stop motion?
That's awesome. It sounds super stressful though, like having that tight of a schedule for just spending literally all day just moving the characters a little bit.
I will say the worst part about stop motion, and any person who works in stop motion will 100% agree with me. Like I was saying a second ago, if you're really interested in animation, a thing to look out for, is retake animation positions, right? I was in charge of Central Park retake animators and stuff like that. If someone ever says the word retake in stop motion animation, that is like the death term, because you have to go get the set, you have to put on the onion skin to find out where the character, because the characters are bolted down every time. So it's like if you have to go back and reshoot something, you can't fix that in post. Someone can't just do a version 2 on a file. Someone has to physically do it. So it's a little stressful, yeah. Get it right the first time.
Oh man. I don't know if I could deal with that pressure. Good thing I'm not in stop motion. But more power to the people who are. I commend them. Diana says
great friends who are in stop motion and they're incredible people. So
awesome. Yeah, you mentioned like a people that you know and stuff. Diana says, with story ideas, how do you copyright them? I guess is what she's asking.
Oh man, that's a good question. I know I'm not the say all end all be all on that, but you can copyright things. You can just go to copyright. I do that through my lawyer, so that's why I feel like I can't speak to it. But there are totally ways to do that. The copyright. I don't know the ULR for it, but that's a great website to check out. It covers everything because they now know this day and age there's YouTube and there's streaming platforms, and it's not just here's my book, how do I copyright it? So a lot of information is there, and it's very doable. I didn't realize that, not too late, but it did take me a while to realize oh, you can just do this, and yeah, you can. It usually involves something physical, so you do have to kind of be this is a pitch deck I have, or this is a video that I've done or something like that. I don't know the process of if it's just living currently as a nugget in your brain, but yeah, if that's something, my show is copyrighted, which is why we went public with Max's art. I probably would not have done that unless we were copywritten, but they have all that information on whatever the U.S. Department of whatever that is.
Malin, I didn't want to answer anything about it before Allissoon did, but I took an entertainment law class here at UCF, and they said that is not the best way to do it. She mentioned that, my professor, but she was like, don't do the mail to yourself thing. You can go to literally copyright.gov. I'm gonna put it.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah. So
yeah, you can go to copyright.gov and you can copyright scripts, you can copyright character art, and I think you can type a description of the character as well. I'm not going to go in depth with it. I'm not a lawyer or anything, but I know legal advice. It's not what this is. This is just what I heard in general, but you can do it yourself, and it's not very expensive from what I've heard to copyright characters. It's like 40 something bucks each, I think, which is weird. Yeah.
I thought you were saying what I said was wrong, and I was like, oh, not that I was
no.
We did that, so I got concerned of did we do it wrong?
No, I didn't want to like answer it for you. So like I assumed you would say something similar. But yeah, so basically that's it. I only know that because I just looked into it before and then also took that class, and she was like, so people will do, what was it called? I think what you're talking about, Malin, she called like a poor man's copyright or something. But then I was like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And then immediately after she was like, but don't do it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Never mind. You do kind of own something once you make it, technically, but it's much easier to defend it, she said, if
It
you
makes you
apply it.
feel good.
Yeah, it's easier to defend it in court if someone steals it if you have applied the copyright, like, officially through the government, if that makes sense. But yeah, I felt weird jumping in there like that.
No, I'm so glad you put up the website, because I remember like that we looked it up, and yeah, it is something that you can do. It's not like you need to be like at Netflix and they're signing off on your thing and then you can copyright it. Like it is scary to put something out there, but I can't sit here and say that the reason that we get meetings or we've gotten, you know, voice actors or things like that isn't because we're public. Like that helps so much. And you know, like we wouldn't feel good being public if we didn't know that we had, like you're talking about, Haley, that kind of like security blanket, right? It's
yeah,
like, oh,
exactly.
It's traceable back to us, you know.
Yeah, it's a good thing to do, I think, if you're making your own thing, trying to do it like independently, to copyright as much as you can, probably. So let me see. We are kind of it's funny because I actually forgot when I said we would end. Allissoon, I was gonna ask you if you remembered when it was supposed to be.
Good until like 6 here. Well, I guess that's, I don't know what time that is for you, but like in the next like 5 or 10 minutes, and then I can find out what my Netflix Slack is saying.
Okay.
A lot of notifications.
Okay, thank you so much for everything so far.
Oh no, this was so much more fun.
I gotta squeeze something in last minute question wise. Does anybody else have anything? You can always post them in the chat like everyone's been doing and stuff.
I have one
sorry,
real
go
quick.
Ahead.
So you mentioned obviously the importance of networking, and obviously there's no way to place a value on any given networking person that you've networked because you don't know when it could become useful later. Was there a particular job that you worked at where you felt like you made a ton of great connections that you use a lot?
That's a really great question. I'm gonna say it definitely was Bento Box. So the first production I was over there was the beginnings of Central Park, and I got that job through a friend through Crunchyroll. So I just worked on that Crunchyroll show with her. She went to Bento Box, and then I was like, my time is also ending on this Crunchyroll production. Do you need more people? And it ended up working out, and it's a close friend of mine who I hang out with outside of work and whatnot. So I'm very, very thankful to her. But from that job, not only like you're talking about, Maggie, networking wise, there are people from that Bento Box show, Central Park, and Bob's that ended up working on Battle. Our editor is the editor for Central Park. I love Stephanie, that's her name, to death. And when it came to editing the pilot, the animatic first off version, I was like, is Stephanie available for freelance? Can she work after work? Stephanie is a badass mom of 2, did our pilot, and also was working on Central Park. So kudos to her, superwoman. But that was the job where I was like, oh my gosh, I love all these storyboard artists. I love all these artists. Some of them ended up working on Battle as well. And then also just from like a, you know, because one thing, these are all jobs, right? These are all jobs. Jobs are great. You know, they pay for rent, which is important. But, you know, jobs are there to supply your real life, right? You know, like your hobbies and things like that. I love working on cartoons. I feel so grateful to be doing too many things. But at the end of the day, I like to log off the computer and not talk to people about productions and have fun and do stuff with my cats and whatnot. Bento Box, what I'm getting to is Bento Box is a place that I made a lot of really good connections. Honestly, it's the biggest studio that I had where like I still talk to Bento Box people to this day. I have not been there for a long time. I miss all those people. But it was like out of all the places I've been at, not that any chagrin to Shadow Machine or Stupid Buddy or anything, I still know people there. But Bento Box was the first place where I was like, oh, this is my gang. Like there's 5 of us that are still in a group chat that talk, you know, like whether I, you know, like we're going to work on things in the future, which I really hope so. You know, I still like it was the studio that I met some really good people.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
They also, by the way, speaking of just job stuff, they post a lot of job openings. I'm not speaking for Bento Box, but if you guys aren't following them on like, I guess LinkedIn or something, like I swear that place is always posting openings. So it is a good place to check because they're always doing stuff. So.
All right. Any closing questions? Because really quick, if anyone who's still here wants to be in it, and if Allissoon is okay with it, I want to do a group picture, but you know, like a screenshot, basically.
I'm coming to Florida right now in the next.
Just be like taking a selfie with Allissoon, just like.
How much of the budget can we use? Where's our treasurer?
Abby, get in here. All right, so
Abby.
if you want to be in the picture, you can turn on your camera. If not, I totally understand. I'll give everyone a second.
Yeah, I'll say too, and I'm really not trying to plug anything, but if you do think of a question and like you do, like if you're working on something, literally a lot of the time when I do Twitch streams, all we're doing is talking about, you know, making comics and, you know, what fun things like that. So if something ever did come up, you know, like feel free to jump in whenever those are happening. I'm a person, you can look at me. I don't keep a schedule. So whenever they happen, they happen. That's just how it goes. But, you know, like always feel free to jump in and say you were from the UCF thing. And then, you know, we can talk about whatever you want. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm going to plug your Twitter really quick, actually. So guys, if you haven't followed Allissoon, you totally should. It's a good idea. I have not been to any of your Twitch streams yet, but I definitely want to go.
and we're talking about the same thing, so it's always fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is also the Twitter for Battle of the Bands, the official one, if you want to follow that too. All right, guys, I'm gonna take the screenshot now. So smile at the camera. Don't close your eyes. I'm gonna take a couple. All right, there's one. What do I name this capture one? All right, and then two. Awesome. All right, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Allissoon. That was awesome. Like beyond words.
Yeah, I'm wishing you guys all the best, whether you're a freshman, junior, sophomore, senior, super senior, whatever. You guys are all going to kick ass. You seem like a lovely bunch. And yeah, just be yourselves and make cool shit. Sorry to swear at the
And you as well, Allissoon. All of that right back at you. I cannot wait for your cartoons to come out. I will be following it adamantly. I cannot wait. All right. Well, everybody, gonna wrap it up here. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, have a great weekend. Bye, guys.